Definitely also make the presentation available and give you a link for that later on. In the meantime, if somebody wants to follow along the websites that I'm going to mention in the presentation, I'm just putting the URL for that in the chat. Okay, let's get started with reason number 1. The biggest reason, of course, is that people need to use the software itself. That is already the first way of getting involved with a software project, because otherwise, if you are not involved, you don't know what you're going to use and how it is going to benefit you. The second reason that we have, and by the way, these reasons are not ranked in any particular order. They do tend to go from easier involvement to more difficult or more engaged involvement, but by no means do they say that one way of getting involved is better than another. The second big way of getting involved in an open source project like Mahara is to ask questions. Generally, for Mahara, that can be done in the forums, but I've also seen quite a number of people nowadays asking their questions via Twitter or also sending emails to the project. Another relatively easy way of getting involved is for actually bookmarking sites that mention Mahara. That can be presentations, institutions that use Mahara, articles, or even PhD or master theses written about Mahara. And all these things can be collected in our Digo groups. The URL for that is in the link that I provided to you earlier. And that way, when there are questions in the forums, it is quite easy just to point to the bookmarks that we've collected and let people know, for example, in which institutions Mahara is being used, and we don't have to remember all of them, but we just can easily go to a list. So anybody with a Digo account can become a member of the Everything Mahara Digo group and start bookmarking also for the project. What I tend not to do is bookmark in everything on ePortfolios, because that would just be too much, and I would like to focus the group on Mahara things so that these can be found easily. Another big way of getting involved in Mahara, of course, is not just using the software, but also when you run into problems or if you have a feature request or a feature wish, that you report that. And that can be done on Launchpad. The link again is in the link list. And that helps us to improve the software, to make it better, to actually see what is going wrong, because we don't use all the functionalities all the time. Furthermore, what you can also do when you're in the bug report and somebody has already created for the bug that you also found, is that you just click on the little link that says, "This bug affects me." Because what you're doing with that is actually bump up the priority of a bug and thus make it clearer to the developers who are fixing the bugs that this may be something that more people are interested in having fixed. Another way of getting involved is to give feedbacks. As I just said, not everybody in the development teams around the world or who is developing a plugin or who does translation work uses Mahara on a daily basis in such intensity that we are intimately familiar with all the functionality in there. And everybody who uses Mahara also uses Mahara differently. Some integrate it with Moodle, others use it as standalone, others use it with very young learners, with older learners in organizations outside of a formal schooling context. And so the behavior of how we all use Mahara is quite different. And knowing that and also hearing back from you of how you use Mahara, what you would like to see improved, where things work very well, that definitely also helps us in the development work and also gives an idea to other Mahara users of how people use it. So also post case studies, in the Mahara forums or send a blog post in. And all these things help people just to learn more about how you can use the software and also how to make it be usable for e-portfolios. Then another big reason, or another big way of getting involved actually, is to spread the word. That can be done in many, many different ways. Does not have to involve anything online, but it's also just talk to others at your school about Mahara, at your university, or at the organization that you work in. Show them how Mahara works in an informal setting or also in a workshop setting. Tweet about Mahara. Grant has just been doing that, Chris Grant has been doing that quite nicely already now at Mahara UK. Present on Mahara. And use the Mahara logo. Mahara has a logo-friendly policy. That means that you can use the logo without restrictions, or at least in the context of the policy, if it is for non-commercial purposes. Then, what a number of people are involved in Mahara is already the translation process. Currently for Mahara 1.4, which came out last week, French, German, Japanese, Maori, the language of the native inhabitants of New Zealand, and Norwegian are the most complete translations as of now. We have also changed demomahara.org so that you can try the language switcher out yourself. That was feedback we received in a forum post, I think it was, and we've made that possible so that this capability can also be shown. And of course, Mahara has been translated in many, many other languages. I've only mentioned those that are really almost complete, if not really 100% complete, and the others are at various stages. And of course, if somebody wants to help there, that is also a very good way where you can assist the community. Another way of getting involved is to write tutorials. We have a wiki page on the Mahara wiki which already lists a number of tutorials. These are usually short tutorials. They can also be videos that just show how things can be done in Mahara. Which leads me to the next way, to create screencasts. Tutorials don't necessarily have to be the written word, but you can also employ videos, do screencasts, or small walkthroughs that help your institution's learners to understand Mahara and to use it, and if possible also make that available to the entire community. And you don't have to put them onto any Mahara server. You can use YouTube, Vimeo, or your own blog for these purposes. Then we come to the point of answering questions. That, again, is usually done in the forums, but sometimes also on Twitter, and of course a lot of times I think in person when you're in your own institution and just answer the questions of your students, of your staff. Participating in the Mahara forums does not mean that that you only answer technical questions. Some people also only answer how-to questions that concern the application from a user's perspective, while others focus on the tricky technical questions. And all together, do we contribute to answering all questions? Now we come to a seemingly fun thing that can also be quite tricky, but quite gratifying as well, and that is the squashing of bugs. So making the application secure, making it better, getting rid of problems and issues in the software. And of course, had nobody reported any bugs earlier on, we would not be able to find some of these problems because, as I said, we don't necessarily use all the functionality at all times. Bugs can be small or they can be big, they can be easy and they can be difficult. And what we have started to do during the last month is that we tag all the bugs that the developers consider to be a quick fix or a rather easy thing. These are tagged with the tag bite-sized. so that those who are new to the development project know that they might look into this bug instead of trying to tackle a big security issue. And then providing training is another way of getting involved in Mahara. You could provide training to fellow colleagues or to your students and also to people in your community. Mark may have already mentioned that myportfolio.school.nz, for example, offers taster sessions which are supported by the New Zealand Ministry of Education, and that allows a number of facilitators both on the North Island and the South Island to travel to schools and to provide these taster session workshops. These are 2-hour workshops for teachers from various schools in the use of my portfolio, which is basically Mahara. And what the teachers there do is get to know my portfolio in very easy steps. Within these 2 hours, they are also able to talk to other teachers and engage and exchange opinions on portfolios and also how they would like to implement it. Now we come to something that a number of you basically actually already do whenever you go to Mahara and try out a new feature, that is to test features. But in this case, I rather mean the more structured testing, which can now be done via the code review system. What this means is that anybody can participate in the testing of the software before any feature is released to make it so that it actually does what it is supposed to do. And granted, you do need to install a local installation of Mahara, and you need to know how to get code from Git, our repository, that was mentioned already yesterday during the developer workshop, and that David may also mention later on again during his keynote. And once you have the local installation, access to Git, you can download the code from Git and test a new feature that nobody else has yet seen because it is not in Mahara yet, but still in development. And so you can also test features and then actively contribute to the feature being implemented in core Mahara. For the creative minds among us, designing themes and also maybe in the future coming up with skins that Gregor is going to talk to you about later today, is a nice way of getting involved and also for making the software more attractive to younger users, for example, or tailored specifically to a specific user group. Recently, we've had quite a bit of discussion going on in the forums about the usability and in particular in regard to the layout of Mahara. And that was a very nice combination of students from a Scottish university giving feedback, making suggestions of how to improve the software, and then others within the community discussing the suggestions of the students and also providing their own ideas. And Thomas Bell actually also put forward one of the themes that he's currently working on that quite a number of people really, really like. And that is a nice way of just getting also feedback on something that one person is working on and not just an entire developer team. Because you can just reach a really big number of users there in the forums. One thing that we don't yet have in Mahara is unit tests, but that is definitely an area that more advanced developers can engage in. And I say more advanced developers because in the beginning it is necessary to write a unit test framework. And once this framework is available, unit tests can be produced by those that do not have to have very extensive knowledge of Mahara, but unit tests apparently can also be written by those that have a moderate knowledge. And unit tests, what is that actually? Unit tests are automatic tests that allow the testing of one specific functionality within a software. So not just testing everything, but as you would do in a manual test, you just test one thing, and that's what the unit test is for. It is very useful, especially in a powerful and huge software application, to ensure that a new feature does not break an old one, for example. Earlier, I already mentioned writing tutorials is a very good way of getting involved in Mahara. If you want to take it even further, you can also say or participate in a writing project, in a book project. And there is already one book available on Mahara. It is on Mahara 1.2. And in August, the newest book will come out, written by Ellen Marie Murphy, and that is going to be the Mahara cookbook. Some people are currently reviewing it, so if you spot one of those, maybe they can actually give you a sneak preview at Mahara UK. And with books, I don't just mean physical books, as the ones that I just mentioned, but that can also be online books, in particularly, for example, the documentation that we are currently looking into revamping for Mahara 1.4, and then at the same time also expand for Mahara 1.5, and also the translations of these documentations. Now we get to a fun area, the development part, that probably a lot of people at Mahara UK are looking forward to learn more about which plugins are available next to Core Mahara. And the plugins are a great way of extending the functionality of Mahara and tailoring it also more to the use of specific institutions or specific contexts. Mahara already has plugins in the area of authentication, sharing of resources, content aggregation, and then also content creation, such as the Europass plugin and the recent plugin of the continuing professional development logs that has been discussed quite widely recently. When you look at plugins, you do need to ensure that they are fit for purpose and not, for example, actually do something that they are not supposed to do, like this plug here. So now that we have some development work done, it is necessary that this work actually goes through code review to ensure that the software stays secure and that the functionality actually does what it is supposed to do. And before anything can go into Core Mahara these days, it needs to go through a code review, and that means that a minimum of 2 people need to have looked at it. So at least one person should verify the functionality. That can be somebody without specific technical or coding knowledge. And then another person looks at the code, cleans it up, or makes suggestions of how to improve it so that it also runs fast, does not introduce other problems, and just works. Mahara also has coding guidelines. Thank you, Roger, for the 5 minutes. And in the coding guideline or reviewing guidelines, you can read up on how to do a code review and what is involved. Another important feature then, or another important way, is developing, of course, cool new features for Mahara Core, which will enhance the software altogether for everybody. Not everybody is a developer or can be involved in answering questions on the forum or writing documentation or bookmarking. And in order to get new features into Mahara, it is of course also important that somebody sponsors those. Because Mahara is an open source software that anybody can use, that also means that not a single company stands behind it that makes sure that all features get into the software and that can demand money from the users. And therefore, sponsoring features is a very good way of getting features into Mahara. Another way of how the project receives some money is to become a partner. And Mahara partners have the advantage that they can use the Mahara trademark also for commercial purposes. And the money that they give to the project for being partners goes back 100% to the Mahara project to finance certain parts, for example, servers where software where software runs, and also certain bug fixes and bringing Mahara further along. But of course, that is only a small percentage of the actual work that is performed on Mahara by volunteers or companies who are involved in it. So these were the 21 reasons that I wanted to talk about. And if you remember from the first slide, I had a 3/4 reason there. And so you might wonder what that one is. And it's actually a reason that does not have anything to do with the software development, but with the human aspect. Make a contributor smile. The software is not just an not living thing, but it's actually composed of people. People are behind it. People answer the questions in the forums. People answer tweets. People bookmark things. People write books. People go to conferences like Mahara UK. Thus, thank a contributor by brewing them a mean cup of coffee, chocolate or tea, or talk to them about their development work. Test their new plugins that they propose in the forum. Just give them feedback. Anything can make their day, and also show them that others are finding the software that they are working on useful, or the feedback that they are giving on that others appreciate it, take it on. That is very important, I think, in order also to keep everybody involved and to make sure that we know, and also translators and developers know, that others are actually using the software. And if you have seen it on your big screen, you might have noticed that there were some small Mahara icons hidden in some of these presentation slides, and these all make up the Mahara family. By no means are these all of the roles that people can have in Mahara. It is the beginning. And we are always looking forward to expanding the Mahara family and for inviting everybody to join us, to contribute to the project, to make it better, and also to help us grow it in any way that is possible for you to do. And if you want to get involved in mahara.org, please visit the website, register, and participate in the forums, or send us tweets or statusnet message, and you can also get in touch with me personally. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to any questions that you may have.